Thank you for joining our webinar today, hosted by Tanium partner Carasoft, on how to level up your CalSecure strategy. The discussion will highlight key principles of the CalSecure plan, why it was created, we'll delve into lessons learned from an implementing agency, and cover how to prepare for cybersecurity audits. Today, we are joined by an all-star cast of speakers, which I'm happy to introduce to you. First, we have Vitaliy Panych, Chief Information Security Officer for the state of California. Also here is Colonel Ty Shepard, the Joint Task Force Cyber Commander for the California National Guard, and Richard Harmonson, Chief Information Security Officer at the California Natural Resources Agency. The conversation will be moderated by Chris Cruz, California's former Deputy State Chief Information Officer, who now serves as Tanium's Public Sector CIO. With that, I'll pass it over to Chris.
Great to be here. Great to be here with everyone on the webinar. Welcome. Promise to make this a very entertaining and informing session amongst some of California's power-hitting leaders around CalSecure, around the framework of CalSecure, and how we can develop these components, a common component across California. So again, it's great to be here. We welcome the opportunity for interaction with the audience in terms of questions, any interactions that you might have, and how we can answer those moving forward. So before we get started, we wanted to kind of level set expectations on CalSecure and get an idea from the audience on what is your level of understanding of CalSecure. So we wanted to collect that in a multiple choice type format and maybe get some of the information. So we'll take a couple of minutes to really go through this. Next, the first question is, what is the main reason you decided to join today's webinar? Is there obviously information you want to get out of it? You want to look at a public-private partnership? Are you interested in the speakers, the topics, how we really CalSecure is blended down at the county and municipality level? So we're interested in just in getting your feedback and collecting that information, and we will obviously share that with all the panelists as well and do our best to answer those questions. Alrighty, so thank you for taking the time to address that. We really appreciate that. And the third question I think we're also going to go through is, what is your main focus on security and IT operations? We're trying to get an idea of those that are on the webinar, what your area of focus is, and how we can best approach some of these questions and level set your familiarity. Okay, so it looks like what we the first question was answered. 78% is the topic, which is obviously very intriguing for everyone. 22% is the speakers. That's great. So I think that that's the majority of folks that want to see those two interesting areas of focus. In terms of levels of security and familiarity with CalSecure, it looks like that 30% are familiar with it, but like to know more about the level of details. So we'll be sure to join and share that information with you. And then 43% are familiar with it, but haven't started implementing it yet. So I'm sure that our very talented panel will be able to address some of those questions in the format and what the expectations are moving forward. Thank you. All righty, so we're going to get really down to the questions, but first we go and do that, I wanted to give the panel a chance to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Colonel Ty Shepard. So Colonel Shepard.
Thanks, Chris. Colonel Ty Shepard. I'm the Joint Task Force Cyber Commander for the California Military Department, or our California National Guard. So I oversee our units as far as here in California that are traditional National Guard units. We're really blessed with 2 Air Force squadrons and 1 Army CPT. And then in addition to that, our full-time cyber professionals that work in support of CDT at the SOC and doing the ISAs, then also work at the California Cybersecurity Integration Center, also known as the CalSec. So pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great to have you, Colonel Shepard. Next up, we have Richard Harmonson. Richard.
Hello, my name is Richard Harmonson. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for the California Natural Resources Agency, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you, Richard. And obviously, last but not least, we have Vitaliy Panych. Vitaliy.
Good afternoon, Vitaliy Panych here. I'm the State Chief Information Security Officer. I'm over the statewide Office of Information Security, embedded or sitting within the California Department of Technology, or otherwise as known as CDT. So we provide oversight. We're essentially the policy and governance and kind of regulatory shop for our state executive level organizations. We also provide some security operations services. So we're embedded within the data center, the IT solutions provider for the state. Through those means, we get to embed certain security and tactical operational capabilities through the services that the data center provides, notably security operations center services, monitoring, as well as we are also embedded within the California Cybersecurity Integration Center, the CalSIC. Through CalSIC, we provide incident response services, threat intel services, and a myriad of other services, which we will get into throughout this webinar.
And thank you so much for that, Vitaliy. Really appreciate that orientation. So let's get down into the questions that inquiring minds want to know. And I think the first question is for you, Vitaliy. Talk to us a little bit about CalSecure, how it was developed, and with the Core 4, which is the CalSIC Incident Command Organization, and the agencies, and why it's so important to California.
So really, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, but so really, CalSecure is intended to be a strategic roadmap for the state of California and its executive branch entities. What that means, it's really a guiding framework of what we're doing, how we're going to get there, and where we're going to end up in a really prioritized manner. Security ends up appearing or looking like really a black hole. There's a lot of things that need to be done, ought to be done, that we're all preaching out there as cybersecurity professionals. But it's often challenging to kind of bring everybody together in a cohesive manner to serve the broad state of California. In California, 40 million constituents out there, supported and served by about 140 agencies and departments. So quite a few different departments. Really, within the departments, we have about 190,000 employees that help make California's mission successful. So California is highly federated in how we conduct business. So what we needed to do is provide a roadmap, a foundational framework of what we're doing in security to really explain where we're going with all of our stakeholders, from Department of Finance to legislative to the governor's office, so that the capabilities and outcomes that we're working on and are trying to achieve are articulated in one cohesive manner. So really, that is kind of the purpose of CalSecure, is to kind of provide that taxonomy or that dictionary to the top leaders of government in what we're doing. To drill down a little bit, CalSecure, it's separated in three strategic categories: people, process, and technology. You know, each pillar is as vital to each other pillar as to make things successful. So each pillar can't be achieved without the other. So we have technology. We also need people that operate technology. We have the work that are out there embedded within the state agencies that ought to be aware and educated on what security is. So there's certain tactical and key initiatives that are embedded within each of the pillars that I just mentioned. Third pillar is obviously the technical pillar, the technology baseline capabilities that we're trying to outline and baseline for departments to achieve, as well as capabilities for the state community to achieve, to help departments be successful so that those departments aren't operating in a silo or on their own. So all in all, three strategic categories: people, process, and technology. 9 roadmap priorities. It's all separated into 15 key initiatives, and then 29 community-driven initiatives, and that's outlined in some of our horizon mapping within CalSecure. So there's prioritized set of capabilities that must be achieved to support our workforce, to support how we govern our state entities, keep them accountable, measure success, and then obviously the technical capabilities that a lot of solution providers like Tanium are helping augment our departments in achieving baseline security controls. So that really is CalSecure, is to kind of provide a rough high-level framework in what we're trying to achieve, and then be able to use this framework to communicate with our top level leadership, with the governor's office, with the legislative branch, and then our fiscal stakeholders, so that we're all working on the same thing at the same time, at the varying risk levels that we're operating at. So really, it's the guiding roadmap of where we're going.
I think those are great comments, Vitaliy, and I know you've talked about and stressed the need for partnerships as well with the vendor community and really across California at both the county and municipality level as well, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that? You had a little bit of static on your end, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that you stress the importance of partnerships at the county and municipality level, but also the partnerships at the department level to make CalSecure, effectuated at a positive rate, correct?
Certainly, developing CalSecure, we've brought in multiple stakeholders. It's not just one entity setting the goalpost. It's really a community-driven effort. Obviously, we operate in a partnership approach. Our critical partners are the Cal OES, the Cal Department of Technology, obviously, and the California Military Department, and our California Highway Patrol, which augments a lot of our criminal investigation endeavors. So those 4 critical members helped CalSecure be shaped. But then we also brought in about 40 plus different organizations, state organizations, local organizations, private sector organizations, to really help us shape and prioritize what are some of those initial things that must be done, what are some of those secondary, tertiary things that must be done in a prioritized fashion. Obviously, you can't do vulnerability management without identifying your assets. You have to focus on asset management. So there's certain kind of CIS top 18/top 20 capabilities that are prioritized within CalSecure that really show us and the executive leaders that run our departments on what we must achieve, firstly, secondarily, and then going on in a prioritized manner. So it's really a 5-year prioritized map. We're in our 2nd year of this map in achieving success. So we're way on our way in baselining our capabilities and providing statewide services. So really, it's this taxonomy and dictionary that helps us shape on where we're going.
Thank you. This next question is really for Colonel Shepard. Colonel Shepard, obviously, in your role in the National Guard as a cyber incident commander for the state, what are you seeing at the national level in terms of the cyber threat landscape, and how is it trickling down here in California?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. I would say that realistically, the national level, as far as what we're seeing, almost mirrors California. And that's probably just because California makes up a very large part of the national, as far as attack surface in regards to the 5th domain, with its population size, geography, and then just the number of endpoints. It's pretty staggering. Obviously, 5th largest economy in the world, as far as it was individual country, and then soon to be the 4th, with us closing on the sights on Germany here probably in the next 12 months. So realistically, what we see at the national level is very similar to what we see, here in the state of California. Breaking that down into specifics, looking at the statistics as far as within the state, the 2 largest activities we see on the cyber side are ransomware and then corporate data breaches, which make up about 70% of the attacks that we see here in the state, and very closely mirrors what we see on the national side. If you break that down into the different sectors, the top 7 sectors in order for these attacks in order would be information technology, government facilities, commercial facilities, healthcare, public sector, financial services, critical manufacturing, and then lastly, food and agriculture. So the CalSec itself is tracked and assisted with over 400 attacks since the 1st of this year. So very active, as far as seeing those things that mirror, what we see on the national side. Also, what I see, because, I get to wear the state hat, but also get to communicate and see folks on the federal side, is a lot of the attacks that we see here in California, New York, and Texas, so those big states, are often tested out here in those states and seen. And then if they're successful, then they're rapidly kind of duplicated throughout the other 54 states and territories. And on the federal side, I would say, going back to the question as far as what we see, on the global scale, our area of interest on the military side is global. We see a lot of advanced persistent threats, or APTs. essentially doing test boxes of cyber stuff in Ukraine, the Middle East, and in Southeast Asia. We see a lot of those there. I can speak to it firsthand as far as my time in Ukraine, seeing those malware and different systems being used, and then usually 9 to 12 months after they're used in those sandboxes around the world, we see them here. United States. Luckily, we have a really good partnership with a lot of different countries to be able to share that information very quickly and seamlessly.
Speaking of that partnership also too, and obviously the information comes in the state of California, and that's where you share it. Talk to us about what you do with the Core 4 and sharing that with CalSIC and OES. How does that information come up to the governor's office from your perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, the CalSIC, so the CalSIC basically, is constantly monitoring, going through. You've got on the federal side, you've got the MSI SACs, you've got the state regional intel fusion centers that are all correlating, bringing information in, along with obviously on the state side, you've got the state SOC that's closely tied in the CHP. As far as what they do in their intelligence fusion center, so all that stuff is being fed in. We're seeing it all. It's pretty dynamic. So CalSIC's been around for a little bit, but when threats come up, all the information is shared pretty seamlessly, and we're aware of what's going on. And then if it raises to the level as far as it being a significant incident, Cal OES and Secretary Galaducci, very quickly gets on the line with the governor's office, and it spins up, pretty quickly as far as the communications. Luckily, we're really good at that because we've rehearsed it a lot. Unfortunately, that means there's been a lot of incidents, but from a maturity aspects, especially talking with my other partners throughout the states, we're definitely probably the most mature, just because, again, of that, going back to your initial question, that large attack surface, and we see so many incidents here in the state that we get a lot of reps, to use a football term.
Sure. Thank you for that. This next question is really for Richard Harmonson, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at California Natural Resources Agency. Richard, I'm wonder how you address cybersecurity challenges at the department and agency level. And how are you spreading cybersecurity awareness across your specific organization?
Well, we're partnering with each other, and more recently we've been centralizing specific security controls that fall into phase 1 and 2 of the CalSecure roadmap, and resourcing knowledge, or pulling knowledge together and working together, and removing some of the repetitive duplication tasks, repetitive tasks that are duplicated among the organizations. We're able to share that knowledge and share those tasks. It's been a challenge. Security is a challenge, but it's certainly improving with every passing year. The CalSecure roadmap, its phases are very common sense applications of a strategy that will help mature the posture and mature the security programs of the CNRA organization. So at least that's the goal, and we're making progress.
So how are you developing job roles around CalSecure capabilities in terms of ensuring that you have a good integration of security and operations within the agency? And how are you looking at that moving forward when you hire people within your security organization as well?
We certainly have challenges. I don't believe it's unique to us. In speaking with CIOs under the agency and speaking to other ISOs, finding qualified candidates is a bit of a challenge. And again, as part of the CalSecure roadmap, it calls out building those skills, attracting those professionals, retaining them. We are doing things like hiring lower classifications in IT and training them and tuning them up. That's one of our strategies. And we're continuing to work with our recruitment services within the organization. And we don't have the silver bullet or the solution for all the challenges in hiring professionals today in the state, but we're working on it, and it's getting better. And we're hoping to see some support from OIS and from the leaders in California as well.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. This is a
Certainly,
question.
if I may,
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
please.
if I may add to that, obviously the people side of CalSecure is is important. Obviously, you can't achieve success without operators, without security-minded security professionals at all levels, not just within your quote unquote security team, but within every discipline of IT, and then as well as every discipline of the business. We want and need to have security-minded professionals that are lawyers, security-minded professionals that are HR professionals, not just your quote unquote security pros. So we're really identifying those gaps and weaknesses in the workforce through various forms of audits and assessments. So we have dedicated teams that go out and look at the books of a department, looks at the HR onboarding, offboarding, HR maintenance and lifecycle processes. And then those also get measured by what we do with assessments and kind of tactical red team assessment simulation exercises conducted by our military department partners. One of the tasks that our military department partners will do is they'll go in and red team an organization and try to look for potential targets for social engineering attacks, for phishing attacks, and then bring back my office relevant metrics such as how many users clicked on a potential or an actual phishing lure, how many users subverted or gave up their credentials in a social engineering attack. So those types of metrics get rolled up into what we call a maturity metric into my office that measures a myriad of security controls based on NIST CSF. So we baseline and gauge each department's ability and capability to be resilient and defend themselves. And I just use this one example of security awareness and training security control and how we measure it through our governance life cycle and process. But yeah, certainly the workforce educating the workforce is of the utmost importance. Some say users on our network are liabilities. I'll push back on that and say, hey, they could be our greatest ally. If a user is trained correctly, is cautious and security aware, and is reporting, any potential phishing lures appropriately through the processes that we define within a department as well as at the statewide level. At the statewide level, we're working with departments to intake, reporting mechanisms to have departments report phishing attacks and attacks of other nature into our security operations center that works closely and jointly with the CalSIC. And then just to step back a bit, CalSIC is information sharing arm, the central coordinating hub of all things cyber in California. So that goes beyond the executive branch. So through the hub of CalSIC intakes tactics, techniques, and procedures of threat adversaries all across the world, working with our federal partners, with our local partners, and some of the other industry sectors that Colonel Ty Shepard mentioned. So through that team, the threat intelligence team embedded within the CalSIC, they provide us relevant information so that we can tune our policies, tune our attack defenses, and tune what we do so that we don't underreact nor overreact in everything we do when it just becomes when it comes to governance or SOC processes. So that's of the utmost importance, is having that information sharing arm that shares relevant intelligence artifacts in an automated as well as a manual basis. So the CalSIC also shares manual intelligence artifacts. What I mean by manual, it's over email. So encourage folks and the audience members to go to CalSIC and sign up for the intelligence artifacts. And there's a particular mailing list that's out there. There's regular threat briefings that are conducted by a threat intel team at CalSIC. So that's the CalSIC side. So on the talent pool, obviously we mentioned it is a challenge. It is a challenge, right, to hire qualified or just security professionals out there in the world. At the time we released CalSecure, there were 35,000 job openings advertised in the state of California alone. And that's private and public sector combined, state and local level. Right now, the latest numbers, according to CyberSeek, 83,000 job openings. And those are job openings that security cautious organizations know that they need to fill. There's probably way more. So there is a huge talent or a huge shortage in being able to recruit and retain cybersecurity professionals for public and private sector combined. What we're doing internally, number one, is establishing and initiating academies, education academies, information security leadership academy. There's various cybersecurity boot camps, information security officer training. So those are some of the kind of formalized classroom type academies that my office runs within the California Department of Technology. Then we're also building pipelines to work with educational institutions, with high schools, with various scholarship programs that enable students education, and then ultimately help them land jobs within a government sector. So we're working with those types of organizations to get access to those kind of talent pools. Also, another noteworthy thing that I want to mention is we're working with the UC and CSU system. Dr. Keith Clement, I do want to always give a shout out to Dr. Keith Clement. He's a vital member of our cybersecurity task force, the Workforce Education Subcommittee. So Dr. Keith Clement has been spearheading the development of a security curriculum for the UC and CSU system, as well as the community college system that has been already adopted. So really, we're not only building our internal education capacity, but also sourcing into these talent pipelines, but then providing a means and a mechanism for those education providers to teach the students the right things so that they could land jobs in the appropriate security control category, if you will. And we're mapping our talent and hiring recruitment process to the NIST NICE framework. So which really outlines the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities of every discipline of cybersecurity, from your SOC analyst to your malware analyst to your incident responder to a privacy and a policy type person. So those types of jobs are being standardized. Duty statements and work duty statements are being standardized against the NIST NICE framework, and we're also releasing a standard to help our departments basically hire for the right roles that the education and academic sector is developing out there in the community. So there's various things that are being done, and those are alluded to some of the 15 tactical initiatives that I mentioned. So there's quite a bit of things that we're performing there.
Thank
So
you,
what I'm
Dr.
hearing, Vitaliy, is that cybersecurity is a team sport, and that recruitment and retention of people is very important. And there's only so many resources to go around that you guys need to share in. Therefore, you're trying to synchronize on all of your strategies and standards as it applies to cybersecurity.
Exactly. And really, this partnership approach that I keep going back to is really intended to socialize this talent and really augment and support organizations that don't have internal capacity, ability, whether it's a security tool or whether it's a personnel resource. I also do want to emphasize that there are certain security services that the state provides. Security Operations Center. Not everybody could have a SOC, a traditional, formal, quote unquote, Security Operations Center. So a few years ago, we've stood up the Security Operations Center to augment the departments that don't have SOC people, SOC processes, nor tools. So we're well on our way to supporting about 30 of those departments and kind of be their security services provider and collect their internal logs of their critical systems, like internal firewalls, Active Directory, endpoint logs, and correlate that within our SOC. Correlate that using the internal and external threat intelligence that we receive through CalSIC. So that's the SOC. We also have the statewide area network that embeds certain critical security capability, right? We have the state WAN, the California Government Enterprise Network. The state CGEN incorporates security protections like, well, obviously the monitoring, it's all by default integrated and embedded within the monitoring, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems. Also working with MSISAC, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. which provides an ability to monitor and put in sensors on our networks and correlate that data with other states, denial of service protections, and a myriad of other capabilities. So within CDT, we also have a dev shop, an application development shop that provides or develops products for customers and for state agencies. Through this dev shop, we've enabled or created a DevSecOps kind of lifecycle or DevSecOps process. So really an ability to ingrain and embed security controls while code is being developed. Security controls such as, dynamic code analysis, static code analysis. So your security scanning on your code that as it's being developed by the developers. So that the developers have the capability and ability to test their own code as they're developing in real time before it gets shipped. Within that, once a product does get shipped, we also embed crowdsourced vulnerability and threat hunting, crowdsourced vulnerability hunting. So we've also layered on top of that an ability to go out and pen test our apps as they get rolled out and go back and test apps that are already in production. So there's certain, a lot of those capabilities that are built in. And I could go on and on. There's a handful of more, but we'll save it for later.
Thank you. I know, Richard, you wanted to say something along that lines as well? Any additional comment?
No, I was just thanking Vitaliy. I think he did a good job explaining. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question I have is really slated for you, Richard, and Colonel Shepard, and it's around what are some of the challenges that agencies and departments are facing in implementing CalSecure? And then two, I think to Colonel Shepard, how does the military department go along with collaborating with the agencies and CDT in their mission around these audits? In other words, not to be more of an advocate rather than having a layer of punitive discipline. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, Ty, if it's okay for you, I'd like to share my experience with the military department at the agency level. Over the last few years, watching the assessments, I'm seeing a substantial impact, a positive impact. Folks are asking questions. I think they're sometimes shocked, but definitely appreciative of the insight that they're getting from the military department assessments. And I think overall, their security posture and stance has improved, and I think it will continue improving. So I'm very grateful to the military department's work. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess on my side, we've got the greatest job, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's great to go out and participate and be a critical part of this, and then do the fun stuff like pen test and assess and everything else. So just like you talked about, Chris, and Vitaliy hit on, the California Military Department, we conduct those independent security assessments per state law, and then we do all this in support of CDT. So the agencies work through CDT to schedule the ISAs. We just get the fun stuff as far as going out there and doing that. And after we do these ISAs, we brief and present the findings to the leaders of the state agency, and then those reports are given out to CDT for review, and then compiled to measure up and look at the state's overall cyber maturity assessment. In my opinion, this is a phenomenal model. I tell all the other states and territories when I go back east to DC that they should plagiarize everything that we've done here, just because, again, you're saying you've got these requirements, you've got these things you need to do, everything else, but if you don't test them, you don't audit them essentially, and then pull those back in to really look what you are. You're just kind of guessing at where you're at from a maturity perspective and a model perspective. And it's good too for the state agencies and obviously the state, because you've got an actual assessment that's objective, that's independent, that's getting done. So if you're a state agency, you've got that in your hands. You can utilize that to ask for additional resources, or to do additional training, or to function, or to say, hey, we're good, legitimately we're good at this across the board. And then from the state side, we can go, CDT can take a look at that, and they know objectively where we're at as far as a maturity perspective. They can go to the legislative branch, or they can go to the governor's office and give an accurate picture as far as where we're at. And then if we're looking at resources or anything else, we're using those taxpayers' dollars efficiently, and how to do those. So it's a really good model. It was super exciting to be a part of it, and we enjoy every bit of it.
Thank you for that, Colonel Shepard, and thanks, Richard, too, for your perspective on that. So the next question, too, really is focused on Colonel Shepard and really Vitaliy. You guys have talked about the state program, the processes and procedures wrapped around that. How do you anticipate interacting with the counties and the municipalities and enforcing some of the CalSecure components?
Yeah, I can jump in on that, Vitaliy, if you want me to take the first swing. Yeah, talking about CalSecure as a really good document, that's one of those really good strategic pieces of paper that's been developed by the state. Another really good strategic document that I highly encourage everybody to read, and if you're from another state, plagiarize, would be the ESF 18, so the Emergency Support Function 18, which is essentially the playbook for how we do incident response, and we do communication and coordination for cyber response in the state. So, talking about that, specifically the intelligence sharing you're talking about, it's pretty congested, and it's, there's not really good information sharing going along, especially when there's cyber insurance or lawyers involved. But those lines of communication are open. The incident response plan for the state is codified. So, I highly, recommend, taking a look at that. And on the intelligence piece, on the military side, we call it information advantage, as far as from a cyber, threat perspective or warfare perspective. When I was back east at Fort Meade, I thought one of the best quotes I heard there at the conference, so at the Cybercom and NSA headquarters, was from the MORFOR commander for the Marines, Major General Heritage. He said, what they do and what we do in the military is 20% offensive, 80% defensive, and then 100% enabled by intelligence. Which is true. So, our adversaries are really good at what they do because they're sharing information seamlessly between each other, and the techniques, and it's open source on the dark net as far as what they're doing. So, on Team Blue or our side, we need to be able to do the same thing. And with that, I would say that probably 85% of the state and federal infrastructure, as far as to be able to share the information and lines of communication, is there. We just need to build those relationships, down there with the private sector folks, and down there at the state and counties and local municipalities to be able to share that. And like I said, we talked a little bit about that as far as the state. You've got the CalSIC, you've got the CDT SOC, you've got the CHP CCIU, the Computer Crimes Investigation Unit. On the federal side, you've got the NSI SACs, you've got the DHS, CISA, and FBI have their centers. All of those are interconnected as far as how we do stuff as far as within the state. And then regionally, like I said a little bit earlier, touched on, you've got the JRIC down in Los Angeles, the Joint Regional Intel Center. Again, and a lot of folks think these are law enforcement or anything else, but they have cyber components and some of them huge cyber teams built into there. And we actually have folks also embedded from the CalSIC down there. You've got OCIAC, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center. San Diego, you've got the LEAC, the Law Enforcement Coordination Center. And then up in Northern California, you've got the NICRIC, the Northern California Intelligence Center in San Francisco, and then the regional office here in Sacramento. But all those organizations are sharing stuff seamlessly, and it's great. They're using the TLP protocols, the traffic light protocols. So if certain information doesn't want to be shared, if it's a private entity or anything else, it doesn't have to be. But again, all using that document like I referenced as far as ESF 18. And then finally, I would just say, LA Unified School District, using it as an example, the cyber incident that happened down there recently, that was a great example of, you've got a school district that has an incident. It came into the JRIC as far as the information. So down there, that Intelligence Fusion Center, where you've got the cyber team there. The cyber team from the CalSIC was actually the ones that watch at 2 o'clock in the morning when the report came in from LA Unified School District, so they knew how to report it. And then as soon as it hit there, literally it was that information was disseminated out using the proper TLPs to the FBI, CISA, ourselves, even back to Cybercom, and the response was phenomenal as far as getting systems back up and mitigating the threat. So it's a good system.
So what I'm hearing from I'm sorry, Vitaliy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add on, certainly collaboration is key. I would advise folks at the local level, collaborate with CalSIC, reach out, CalSIC at CalOES or CalSIC at oes.ca.gov. And there are a myriad of services that we're preaching and providing, such as, incident response services. Ty at the beginning mentioned that the CalSIC team, our dedicated incident response team, has been activated over 400 times. And a majority of those times, unfortunately, have been at the local and at the school district level. So reach out to them. There are a lot of things that they could help out with, such as attack surface management. We're also subscribing and providing attack surface modeling and attack surface management tools to our state agencies, but we're also scaling that out to the locals. So attack surface management is really an ability to scrape your outside perimeters and see what we could see as an attacker, as an external adversary. And there are multitude of open source sources that we subscribe to and correlate to in order to conduct those assessments. So attack surface management is something we do on certain critical infrastructure sectors as the threats arise. An additional thing is the independent security assessments that the military provides. Those are also going to be provided to the school districts. There is a bill or a law that was passed that authorizes the military department to conduct these assessments for our local schools, which have been heavily targeted through ransomware. So I do want to offer some of those up and collaborate and reach out to us. And in some cases, some of the services that my office provided to the state agencies, we're also scaling those out in the form of security operations and monitoring to augment those security teams that ought to be doing their monitoring internally. On the governance side, where we're constantly evolving and developing security standards and policies. Really it gets a little more prescriptive and more defined than CalSecure is. So I'll urge folks to reach out to us if they need a policy framework or a policy artifact that we provide to departments. So we've defined hundreds of different policy standards and policies that could support a department at varying risk levels. So there's resources out there, and I encourage folks to reach out. And also, as far as resources are concerned, you could find more resources at cdt.ca.gov/security. And there are various forms of contact information there. Back over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Vitaliy. So what I'm hearing from both Vitaliy and Colonel Shepard is that we have a comprehensive incident response and monitoring system throughout the state of California with many different organizations integrating into that give you guys that data. So California does have kind of a state approach in terms of incident response, reporting and sharing, and that you're also extending those capabilities now to the school districts and having the ability to audit those, which is great to hear and very refreshing. So thank you. Under the next question that I had is, how are you guys really, how do agencies start with implementing the technology requirements? And maybe this is for you, Vitaliy, and also for Richard from a customer perspective around how do they go about meeting that? I know there's a checklist of CalSecure requirements that are out there. How does an agency follow through and implement that? And how does CDT kind of provide checks and balances over that? I'm curious to get what that perspective is.
Well, first of all, as risk prioritization is concerned, reference CalSecure, and I encourage and implore organizations to really look at their own internal risk posture and understand their risk posture, have a governance process where you're communicating and talking about risk, talking about your gaps, your issues that are hopefully identified by a vulnerability management lifecycle or process that you have. If you don't, you should have one. And if you don't have one, have a governance team that consists of not only IT, but your whole organization, your organization's heads to talk about risk, because risk spans beyond just IT level risk. So just have a risk-based discussions. What are those risks? What are those issues? Prioritize them in terms of cost, the metrics that you have. Is the issue worth fixing? What happens if you don't fix it? Always baseline and identify your impact as it pertains to your business. But furthermore, we also issue for our, at least state departments, the State Information Management Manual that we're constantly rolling out in terms of articulating prescriptive capability. For example, cloud security controls. yeah, we need to have them, but what do we do to have them? So we have a cloud security control standard, multi-factor authentication standard. We know we need to have multi-factor authentication, but there's multiple ways to skin that cat, right? There's multiple ways to integrate and implement MFA, whether it's SMS based, smart card based, physical token based. So we're actually rolling out a standard and a policy to support our kind of zero trust direction to outline those various forms of multi-factor authentication so that department operators are aware what's out there and can make the decisions to implement things in a prescriptive manner. So there's various prescriptive things that we implement or issue to our state agencies as far as guidance on what we do to run these security controls. On top of that, obviously, various security contractual requirements that we publish through working with the DGS, procurement vehicles that we provide to our departments, as well as onboarding mechanisms to solution providers, so they could help augment our entities with being that force multiplier, using a service, using a tool to achieve a capability outcome that cannot be achieved internally with just an individual. So tools are also important, and services are also important as a force multiplier to personnel. But yeah, reference our policy frameworks, our metrics that we publish, and the parameters. We have various parameters that we issue on our websites. The state defined parameters, notably that I'll mention. We'll talk about specific NIST controls and statewide organizationally defined parameters that must be achieved. Obviously, those could go up or down based on your risk level or risk tolerance level within an agency. But yeah, reference some of those and reach out to us at CalSIC or the statewide Office of Information Security. And we have a fantastic advisory services team that we've just stood up. So we're also embedding kind of a virtual CISO bench of individuals that we could allocate or assign to departments or their issues to kind of consult them and really consult not just IT, but also consult their directors and their department leadership so that we could prevail the risk management mindset from the top down.
That's great information and feedback. So Richard, I'm curious to see too how you communicate CalSecure from your agency CISO perspective at the Natural Resources Agency down to your department CISOs and CIOs. What is that mechanism or framework that you use?
Well, we meet. There's a cadence of meetings and discussions. Oftentimes, the discussion points are the technical capabilities and key initiatives that are found in the CalSecure roadmap, and we keep pushing forward and move from one phase to the next to implement those technology controls or initiatives.
Excellent.
And
Thank you.
Just to add on top of that, sorry to keep interrupting. One of the things we've done, actually 6 months ago, we did actually less than 6 months ago, we've done a security tabletop exercise at the top executive level. So every executive level cabinet secretary was there, going through a simulated mock scenario of an adversary nation state level attack on California, obviously in a theoretical sense. But I noticed quite a bit of secretaries sitting there at the table with incident response plans in hand, and your secretary, Richard, he was sitting to my left at the table. Noticed he had his incident response plan in hand. And speaking of that, those are some of the policy artifacts that we provide to departments, a templated incident response plan that one can start working from. So it's really important to have an incident response plan published, but then also exercised and practiced. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, was the quote, right?
Right.
Not to be overused by Mike Tyson, but yeah, always practice your IR plan, not just within IT, but within the business, bringing in your chief counsel, bringing in your public information officer. Your public information officer needs to have a scripted response when the next big event or when the next breach happens, to be able to articulate appropriately to the public and to their constituents. So they need to be able to speak cyber, but both at, not just at the IT level. And that's what I'm stressing is we need to get our non-IT folks, our business folks to speak cyber, so that we're all speaking the same language.
Well, and after your tabletop exercise, I got a significant number of inquiries from the CNRA organizations and their CIOs. So the secretaries and directors went back and started asking questions. So thank you.
Yeah, and it was fascinating to see, the secretaries speaking some of these acronyms that we speak in cyber, knowing what an APT is.
Right.
So it was certainly fascinating to kind of have them participate in our world.
That's great to hear on the evolution of cybersecurity from you, Vitaliy and Richard and Ty, how much you've been able, the inroads that you've been able to make with the business and transforming how they look at these things, because as we've always been taught, it's everyone's responsibility when it comes to security. I know we're up against time here. We got about 6 minutes left, but I wanted to ask one more question that I thought was paramount, and maybe to Colonel Shepard and to you, Vitaliy and Richard, please feel free to chime in, is where is the federal government helping and assisting with CalSecure, with the Core 4? And what level are they? Is there executive order from Biden that's come down? What directives are they asking you to implement here in California? I'm curious to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in on that one. So on the federal government side, we're working it from the tactical level up to strategic level. I mean, in the CalSec, almost every day, you've got FBI, DHS, and CISO personnel working on site there. So pretty amazing as far as to have those resources, there. When we do incident response missions, typically we'll have members from all the Core 4 that we've talked about as far as for state agencies. And then in addition to that, we'll have an FBI and a CISO member on that team as well. So, pretty powerful. So not just like talking, but actually, bootstrapping and going out, on missions together. And that's part of the SOPs. So the standard operating procedures and tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, on the federal government side, when you have an organization in a state that's mature like we are, and how we do things. So, that's awesome. I would say too, on the federal side, so they've created a new program called the Cyber 9-Line. So that basically is a very concise report that we can send information directly back to Fort Meade. So that's Cybercom and the NSA. I would say that in the last 45 days, I've submitted 3 Cyber 9-Lines as far as from the state. So pretty high level, communication means, and even did an update really this morning on one of those. So great though to be able to have that means to communicate, back to literally the best of the best back at Fort Meade as far as on the cyber side from the national perspective. And I would say too, I mean, just last month, the Office of the National Cyber Director, so ONCD, so the White House's head cyber person, Chris Inglis, came out personally to LA, met with the mayor of LA, and then all the cyber professionals down there in LA, including the CalSec members. And we went over kind of a roundtable discussion as far as, and he praised the response from the state and then the city as far as to the LA Unified School District approach. So, I think there's a lot there. They're still developing the ONCD as far as the White House, their plans. I met with them for a half a day 2 months ago when I was back in DC to help try to use that. And I would say that they're looking actually at California's model and some of our strategic policy and guidance to help shape the national model. So that's pretty cool. And then lastly, I would say that, on the lately, as far as stuff that's come out, I mean, the DHS cybersecurity grant, so the SLCGP, the state local cybersecurity grant program, has been published. So $1 billion over 4 years to the states as far as for assets. And there's a lot of nouns, adjectives, and verbs in that document, along with money tagged to it. That's out there.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Colonel Shepard. Well, I know we're about 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Obviously, we could go on and on and on about cybersecurity and all the great work that's happening in the state of California with what you guys are involved in and the execution of that. I know that we're looking for maybe any questions that the audience may have, but probably in the essence of time, what we can do is gather those questions, and then depending on who they're directed at, whether it be Colonel Shepard, Vitaliy, or Richard, we can send those on to them by email, and maybe they'll answer them. So any final questions from Vitaliy, any comments from you, from Colonel Shepard, or from Richard before we adjourn?
Oh, first of all, thank you for having us and be able to kind of have this kind of brainstorming out loud conversation and really sharing on what we're doing. There's certainly a lot that needs to be done. Obviously, the threat landscape has been ever evolving. Actually, this past year and a half, the threat landscape has been greater than probably the 20 years previously combined. So a lot to do, a lot of fatigue out there on the staff, on the community out there at large. So I really do want to appreciate the security professionals out there that make things happen, and I appreciate the solution providers that augment us and really enable us to be our force multipliers to keep up with the threat. So lots to do, but much appreciated, and it just takes awareness. Where we're all awareness champions and need to raise that level of awareness internally within IT, but also within the business and programmatic space. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent. You're welcome. I've always said this is a public-private partnership, and like you said, the partnership is here to help and ensure that we're successful. So again, thank you so much for what you do, Colonel Shepard, Vitaliy, and Richard. We really appreciate that, and for you guys being guests today and being very candid about where California is and how well you're working together to ensure that cybersecurity is something that's taken very seriously in our state. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
So our final analysis really before we adjourn again is thank you on behalf of Carahsoft and Tanium for joining us.